Hello everybody, my name is Offbeat Outlaw. Welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be discussing rules that you probably get wrong at your D&D table. If you don't get these wrong, this puts you in the top quality of biggest nerds on the planet, and welcome to the club. These are rules that, in my opinion, are pretty easy to misunderstand, or I have seen being misunderstood quite often. And I, as someone who has read these books extensively and also has a theater degree and has read tons of books on language and literature, I'm here to demystify some of these rules. Starting with a rule that I think is the most, in my opinion, commonly misunderstood out of the ones I'm going to talk about today. We have a little rule on rogues. This rule on rogues is quite simple. Misunderstanding, this is what people mistake it for. They think you can only sneak attack once per round. And for the most part, this is okay because rogues don't get a lot of opportunity attacks or attacks that you make on reactions. But people think that you can only sneak attack once per round, and if somehow this rogue can attack as a reaction, they don't allow them to sneak attack, which is incorrect. I already hear you saying, but shut up. I'm gonna explain. Here's what the sneak attack feature says. Beginning at first level, you know how to strike subtly and exploit a foe's distraction. Once per turn, you can deal an extra 1d6 damage to one creature you hit with an attack if you have advantage on the attack roll. Blah, 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 blah. So, once per turn is the key word there. Not once on your turn, which is what a lot of people mistake that as, is once per turn. This means you can sneak attack on other people's turns. That is what this word means. Once per turn, not once per round, not once on your turn, which is what language that is used in D&D. Once per turn. If you don't understand how reactions work, reactions are special actions you can take that occur on or during someone else's turn. So, because of the nature of once per turn, a reaction attack, an opportunity attack, rules as written, can have sneak attack damage on it. That is rules as written. Jeremy Crawford, I'm sure, will agree with me. If you disagree with me, that's okay. Just understand that you are not doing rules as written. Next thing that people misunderstand commonly. How the frick does Divine Smite work? Well, here is the misunderstanding. Divine Smite can only be applied once per turn. This is incorrect. Let us read how Divine Smite actually works. Starting at second level, when you hit a creature with a melee weapon attack, you can expend one spell slot to deal radiant damage to the target, in addition to the weapon's damage. This means that you can smite as long as you hit with a melee weapon attack. It doesn't say once when you hit with a melee weapon attack. It says when you hit with a creature with a melee weapon attack. As long as you hit, you can do all of these things. There is no limit to how many times you can do this. You just have to hit with a melee weapon attack. That is the only restriction for applying Divine Smite. More on smites. Here is another rule. Here's the question. Can monks smite with fist weapons? Technically speaking, no, and here's why. Divine Smite requires you to hit with a melee weapon attack. This is different from an unarmed strike, and let me explain. A melee weapon attack is specifically referencing the melee weapon table in the player's handbook, and that table does not mention unarmed fist weapons. So sadly, that means monks know you cannot smite rules as written with your fists. Now, would I personally allow you to? Kind of. Let me explain. Monks, they get their monk weapons, which is the same damage dice as their fist weapons. It continues to go up with their damage dice of their fists. So essentially, an unarmed strike basically equals fist weapons. So I would allow a monk to use their unarmed strikes to smite. I would just not allow them to do it with Flurry of Blows, because Flurry of Blows would drastically shift the balance, at least at my table. So sorry monks, you cannot smite with fist weapons unless it is on your main action, at least for my table. Otherwise, smite away. Next thing that people seem to get confused on this curious case of weapon attacks, of melee weapon attacks. Let us read something else. So we'll be using monks once again in this, but don't worry monks, this is something you can do. Alright, this is the question that people get confused. Can monk fist weapons activate Hunter's Mark? The answer is yes, it can, and let me explain why. Here's what Hunter's Mark reads. You choose a creature you can see within range and mystically mark it as your quarry. Until the spell ends, you deal an extra 1d6 damage to the target whenever you hit it with a weapon attack. Now, weapon attacks are different from melee weapon attacks. Melee weapon attacks specifically reference the melee weapon table. Weapon attacks means a different thing. It means anything that's not a spell attack. That means your fist, weapon attack. Sword, weapon attack. A chair that you picked up from the bar, weapon attack. If it's not a spell attack, it's a weapon attack. Spell attacks are anything you do or attack rolls made while casting a spell. A weapon attack is every other type of attack roll. I need a thumbnail shot. I want to look studious. That should be good. That is how weapon attacks work in Dungeons and Dragons. Next strange thing that I've seen. You cannot smite or apply Battlemaster techniques to the cantrip Booming Blade. Now, if these all seem very specific, it's because they are. But let me get my Tasha's Cauldron of Everything and let's look at Booming Blade, why don't we? So, the spell Booming Blade reads as follows. Booming Blade. You brandish the weapon used in the spell's casting and make a melee attack with it against one creature within 5 feet of you. Now, I know the language doesn't specifically say melee weapon attack, but it says you brandish the weapon used in the spell's casting and make a melee attack with it. Meaning this sentence can be also read as you make a melee weapon attack with the weapon used in the spell's casting and brandish it without changing the meaning of the sentence. Now this isn't grammar fuckery here, that's just what the sentence reads. You brandish a weapon and make a melee attack with. Oh, now following that, on a hit, the target suffers the weapon attack's normal effects and then becomes sheathed in booming energy until the start of your next turn. So the weapon attack hits. They are then struck with the weapon's usual effects that includes Battlemaster techniques, Divine Smites, Eldritch Smites, any kind of effect that you can apply to melee weapon attacks, and then the spell takes effect. It is not a spell attack. Get over it, gamers. Next, rule thing. So this is a rule that I have gotten wrong until I started looking into this video. Is Hex activated by Magic Missile? And the answer, short answer, is no. Sorry, Brandon. Let me explain how this works. So, you place a curse on a creature that you can see within range. Until the spell ends, you deal an extra 1d6 necrotic damage to the target whenever you hit it with an attack. Now, this is much more general than Hunter's Mark, but we still have to note that it says hit it with an attack. When D&D books say hit with an attack, that means an attack roll must be made, meaning the spell Magic Missile cannot activate the spell Hex, which is sad because I really liked that. How could I make this work and so that you could technically allow it? I would make my player roll to hit with all the magic missiles if they would like to activate Hex. I don't think this screws with the balancing too much because they could also just have the spell Scorching Ray, which does the exact same thing. But Magic Missile does not activate Hex because there is no attack roll made to balance out the math of the situation. So this has been a few rules that I think a lot of people get wrong in D&D, some rules that even I've gotten wrong until recently. Let me know in the comments if there are any more rules you would like for me to clarify, so that we can all just play the game, you know? I've read these books a lot. If you disagree with me, make sure that you Google before disagreeing with me and then make your rebuttal, as I am much more interested in debating with someone who actually knows what they're talking about. So please Google before disagreeing. That is my only caveat. Other than that, I hope you have a fantastic day, and please get the fuck out of my house.